I think one very important issue is with respect to the sanctions organized by the United States and its allies. China obviously has announced that it has a no sanction policy so far. And it actually sides with a lot of countries, for example, all the BRICS countries. So China is actually no different from these countries. But of course, China is under immense pressure from Washington because of its very unique role in terms of its its role in world trade, the role of its currency as a major settlement currency for trade. And I would argue that China's non-sanction policy is more than motivated by the reasons that the Chinese government has said that there are various reasons and causes leading to this war, not all of which would be attributed to the Russian side. I think the more important security reason is that China is very different from all the European countries in the sense that it shares a very long border with Russia, a border of 4,200 kilometers with Russia. China's plunging into sanctions would immediately insert itself into an animosity situation with Russia. And Russia holds a stockpile of 3,000 nuclear heads. Almost all the countries so far have announced sanctions against Russia, enjoy to some extent, one way or another, some nuclear power protection umbrella from Washington. China does not. And China understandably doesn't want to be dragged into a potential third world war. China's nuclear capacity is only 1/10 of Russia's. So now Washington has issued recently some coercive warnings about what's called implications and consequences if China attempts to help Russia evade sanctions. But since a few days ago, the President Biden and President Xi's video call, the rhetoric has softened a little bit. It has softened to the implications and consequences of China providing material support to Russia. Okay, so what is the meaning of material support? I think this is the most important issue from China's perspective when it comes to sanctions. Okay, now my own interpretation currently refers to 3 points based on the United States State Department spokesperson Edward Price's words. I would say that probably arms sales to Russia crosses the red line. It's definitely material support. Using China's international payment system called CIPS to circumvent the SWIFT system, especially for dollar-denominated transactions, probably also qualifies as material support. And also, I would say a dramatic increase in Sino-Russia trade is probably also material support. I think we can use a but-for counterfactual approach to assess the Sino-US trade and ask this question. So had this war not happened, would this trade still have taken place, right? So last year, China-US trade increased by 36%. So the question is, does a 50% increase this year qualify as a material support? Well, I think it's probably on the borderline. I really don't think it's material support. So I think it's, here's a very important distinction here. United States basically is promoting a narrative that not imposing sanction by China is the same as siding with the Russian side. This narrative doesn't apply to other countries, India, Brazil, other countries, but only to China. And I think this narrative should be rejected by the British experience during the entire 19th century, when London adopted what historians called a splendid isolation foreign policy with respect to the constant conflicts and wars on the European continent. That is, Great Britain didn't side with any state in Europe, nor any alliance on the European continent, but still maintained a normal trading relationship with each one of them. And this is basically a neutrality principle. And today, I call on countries like China and other countries that would like to stay out of this mess in Europe to adopt a policy of what I call principled neutrality. Principled neutrality strives for peace, which means restraint from actions that could directly contribute to military fighting in Ukraine, and obviously including sales of arms as well. Principal neutrality also strives for the welfare of ordinary citizens in both Russia and Ukraine. And let me point out that historically, sanctions kill more people than war due to life hardship, starvation, denial of access to medical supplies, and etc. That means maintaining normal trade relationships with both Russia and Ukraine. Principal neutrality calls for humanitarian assistance to the people of Ukraine based on the United Nations humanitarian aid principles, i.e. humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. The international community needs to judge whether actions from Beijing are on the side of peace, on the side of humanity, and of course on the side of China's own national interests, which I don't think is fundamentally at odds with the global interests.
Dr. Gong, what you're saying is that it looks like it's going to be business as usual when it comes to the Chinese kind of role in the Middle East in light of all this. I don't detect a fundamental change, or am I wrong?
China is not so much interested in playing those geopolitical power games in this region, because after all, China is actually the largest partner, trading partner of almost all the countries in the Middle East. So in general, China indeed genuinely seeks an environment of peace and stability in this region. However, I will also say that oil price increases is very bad for China. China imports a lot of oil from this region. It imports a quarter of Saudi Arabia's exports of oil. So I think so from a political perspective, China seems to benefit a little bit from this horrendous war in Ukraine, but economically it's actually suffering. It has an impact on trade, it has an impact on oil, and I'm afraid to say that also probably will have an impact on globalization. Globalization is up in the air right now.